Zara, the girl who was married too young. The world often celebrates success, but rarely tells the story of how it begins in silence, pain, and survival. This is the story of Zara, a girl who was never given a choice, but was forced to make a future out of everything she was never ready for. Zara was only 14 years old when her life changed forever. While other girls were still thinking about school, friends, and childhood dreams, Zara was standing in front of a marriage she didn't fully understand. The wedding was simple, quiet, traditional. People around her smiled, saying, "She is lucky. She has a husband now. Her future is safe." But Zara didn't feel lucky. She felt lost. The man she was married to was Heren, older, quiet, and emotionally distant even from the beginning. He didn't ask her what she wanted from life. He didn't ask about her dreams. He didn't even try to understand her fear. To him, this was normal life. But to Zara, it was the beginning of everything she didn't choose. The early days of marriage were silent. Zara learned how to cook for a house that didn't feel like home. She learned how to stay quiet when she wanted to speak. She learned how to smile when she felt nothing inside. Heren would leave early in the morning and return late at night. Sometimes he would sit at the table without saying a word. Sometimes he wouldn't come home at all. Zara told herself, "This is just how marriage is. Maybe I will understand it one day." But deep inside, something already felt wrong. Months passed. Zara's body changed. Her life changed again. She was going to become a mother. At just 15 years old, she was carrying a child she was not emotionally prepared for, but already loved more than anything in the world. Because this child became her only hope, her reason to keep going. When Klara was born, everything shifted. For the first time, Zara smiled without forcing it. Her daughter's small hands, her soft cry, her innocent eyes, it made Zara believe she still had something worth living for. She named her Klara. And in that moment, Zara made a silent promise. "I will not let my daughter suffer the way I did." But life was not done testing her. Heren did not change after the child. In fact, he became more distant, more cold, more absent. Zara noticed small things at first. Late-night calls he didn't explain. Smiles he hid quickly. A new smell on his clothes. A life he was living outside the home. Without her. When she asked questions, he avoided them. When she tried to talk, he shut her down. And slowly, the truth began to surface. One night changed everything. Heren came home late again. But this time, Zara didn't stay silent. She looked at him and asked softly, "Where were you?" The room went quiet. Too quiet. Heren didn't answer immediately. And in that silence, Zara understood something she wasn't ready to accept. That answer didn't need words anymore. What she discovered shattered everything she had held together. Heren was not just distant. He was unfaithful. The man she was married to, the father of her child, was living a double life. And Zara, still just a teenager in her heart, felt her entire world collapse in one moment of truth. But she didn't scream. She didn't break things. She didn't run. She simply stood there, holding her daughter, trying not to fall apart in front of her, because Klara was sleeping in her arms. And that was the only reason she stayed strong. That night, Zara understood something painful. Love was never promised to her. Security was never guaranteed. And marriage did not mean safety. It only meant survival. And in the quiet darkness of that broken home, a decision began forming inside her heart. Not revenge, not anger, but something far more powerful: endurance. After that night, nothing in Zara's life ever felt the same again. The walls of her home still stood. The rooms still looked familiar. The world outside still moved like nothing had changed. But inside Zara, everything had collapsed. She stayed quiet, not because she was weak, but because she had learned something painful very early in life. Sometimes silence is the only protection you have left, especially when you are holding a child in your arms. Days passed. Heren acted like nothing had happened. He came home, ate, slept, and left again without explanation. No apology, no regret, no change. It was as if Zara's pain was invisible to him. But for Zara, nothing was invisible anymore. Every small action now felt heavier. Every silence felt louder. Every glance felt like betrayal repeated again and again. And then came the breaking point. One evening, Heren left the house again. No explanation, no goodbye, just silence. Zara stood near the window holding Klara, watching him disappear into the distance. And this time, something inside her stopped waiting. She realized she was no longer in a marriage. She was alone, even while being married. At just 17 years old, Zara became a single mother in every way that mattered. No emotional support, no financial stability, no protection, only responsibility, and a child who depended on her for everything. Klara. The nights became the hardest. When the world went silent, Zara's thoughts became louder. She would sit beside her sleeping daughter and stare at the ceiling for hours. Questions kept repeating in her mind. How did I end up here? Why me? How do I survive this? But there was no answer. Only time passing, and pain continuing. She tried to find work. But life was not kind to a young girl alone with a child. People judged her before she even spoke. Some refused to hire her. Some looked at her with pity. Some looked at her with disrespect. She wasn't seen as a person trying to survive. She was seen as a mistake. There were why Zara had almost nothing to eat. She would feed Klara first, and lie to herself that she wasn't hungry. She would drink water just to fill the emptiness. And at night, when Klara slept peacefully, Zara would cry quietly so her daughter wouldn't hear. Because even in pain, she wanted Klara's world to stay peaceful. But pain has a strange effect on people. Can break them, or it can build something inside them that refuses to die. And in Zara, something began to change. Not suddenly, slowly, quietly, like fire forming inside ashes. One day, while working a small temporary job, Zara entered a small kitchen. It was nothing special. Old equipment, simple food, basic customers. But for the first time in a long time, she felt something different. Not happiness, not peace, but direction. She watched how food was prepared, how orders were managed, how customers reacted to taste and service. And something clicked inside her mind. I can learn this. Not because it was easy, but because it was possible. That night she didn't sleep. She sat beside Klara and whispered softly, I will not stay here forever. I will build something for you. Even if the world never believed in her, she would become someone who did. And somewhere inside that broken silence, Zara's new life quietly began. Zara's decision didn't change her life instantly. The world didn't suddenly open doors for her. Pain didn't disappear overnight, and struggle didn't become easier. But something important had changed inside her. She had stopped waiting to be saved. The next morning, Zara woke up earlier than usual. Klara was still asleep. The room was quiet, almost peaceful. For a moment, Zara just looked at her daughter. That small face, that innocent breath, that reason she was still standing. And she made a promise again, not out loud, but deep in her heart. I will build a life where you never feel this pain. Zara started searching for work seriously. She walked through streets she had never paid attention to before. Small shops, cafes, local kitchens, street stalls. Everywhere she went, she asked for work. And everywhere, she faced the same response. No experience. No position. Sorry, we can't hire you. Sometimes they didn't even let her finish speaking. Just a glance and rejection. But Zara kept going. day after day, with Klara sometimes on her hip, sometimes held by the hand. People began to notice her, not as a woman with dreams, but as a young mother struggling to survive. Some pitied her, some ignored her, and some even whispered behind her back. There were nights she returned home empty-handed. No job, no money, no hope for that day. She would sit on the floor, exhausted, while Klara slept beside her. And in those moments doubt would creep in. What if I can't do this? What if I fail her? But every time she looked at Klara's face, the doubt would break. Because quitting meant something worse than failure. It meant surrender. One day, everything shifted slightly. Zara found a small local kitchen that needed help. Not a proper job, just temporary assistance. Cleaning, washing, carrying. Hard work, low pay, long hours. But Zara didn't hesitate. She accepted immediately. This was her first step. The kitchen was loud. Orders shouting. Pans burning. People rushing. At first, Zara couldn't keep up. She made mistakes. She was slow. She was corrected harshly. Sometimes even shouted at. But she didn't respond with anger. She listened. She learned. She absorbed everything like her life depended on it. Because it did. While others complained about the work, Zara studied it. How spices were mixed. How timing changed flavor. How presentation changed perception. Every movement in that kitchen became a lesson. She wasn't just working. She was building knowledge. The chef noticed her. Not immediately, but over time. He saw something different in her. Not talent at first, but persistence. The kind of persistence that doesn't break even when it should. One evening, after closing, the chef asked her, "Why do you work so hard? You barely earn anything here." Zara hesitated for a moment. Then she looked at him and said quietly, "I don't work for today. I work for my daughter's future." That answer stayed in the air longer than expected. For the first time, someone didn't see her as a burden. They saw her as someone building something. Slowly, a small respect began forming around her in that kitchen. But life was still not stable. Her money was barely enough. Some nights she had to choose between food and transportation. And she always chose Klara first. Always. And yet, despite everything, Zara kept showing up. Even when she was tired. Even when she was hungry. Even when the world felt like it was pushing her back. She kept going forward. Because deep inside her heart, a vision had formed. Not just survival. Not just work. But something bigger. Something she couldn't explain yet, but could feel clearly. A restaurant. Her own place. Her own name. Her own future. And this vision was no longer a dream. It was becoming a direction. Zara's life was no longer the same. The kitchen she worked in had become her training ground. Her struggles had become her education. And her pain had slowly transformed into focus. But one thought kept growing inside her. Stronger every day. A restaurant of her own. Not just a job. Not just survival. But something she could build with her own hands. Something Klara could be proud of. At first, it felt impossible. Zara had no savings. No investors. No support system. Only experience. And determination. But sometimes, impossible dreams don't ask for permission. They only ask for courage. She started saving every small amount she earned. Even coins mattered. Even leftover wages mattered. While others spent their money on comfort, Zara spent hers on a future she hadn't reached yet. There were nights she calculated everything carefully. Paper spread on the table. Rent, food, child needs, transport, savings. And every time, the numbers looked too small, too slow, too far from enough. But she didn't stop. Because stopping meant staying in the same place forever. And she refused that life for Klara. One day, something unexpected happened. The chef she worked under noticed her dedication more deeply than before. He called her after work. The kitchen was empty, quiet, and he said something that changed everything. "You think like a business owner, not just a worker." Zara didn't respond immediately, because she had never heard someone say that to her. He continued, "You don't belong only behind this counter. You should build something of your own." Those words stayed with her long after she left the kitchen that night. For the first time, someone didn't just see her struggle. They saw her potential. But potential alone doesn't build restaurants. Money does, and Zara had very little of it. She began exploring every possibility. Small loans, micro support, friends, community help. But every door came with doubt. "You are too young. You are alone. You have a child. You don't have collateral." Every rejection felt familiar. But this time, it didn't break her. It sharpened her. Because Zara had already survived worse than rejection. She had survived abandonment. So she made a decision. If no one would support her, she would start small. Smaller than small. Almost invisible. She found a tiny space. Not a restaurant. Not even close. Just a small corner where she could cook a few dishes and serve a few customers. A place most people would ignore. But for Zara, it was a beginning. She cleaned it herself. Painted it herself. Arranged everything with her own hands. Klara sometimes sat nearby, watching her mother work. And in those moments, Zara felt something powerful. Not exhaustion, but purpose. The first day she opened, only a few people came. Very few. Some out of curiosity. Some by chance. And some just passing by. Zara served each plate like it mattered. Because to her, it did. Every dish carried her story. Every flavor carried her struggle. Every meal carried her hope. And slowly, something started to change. One customer returned. Then another. Then someone brought a friend. Not because the place was big, but because the food felt different. Real. Honest. Made with something deeper than recipe. At night, Zara counted her earnings. It wasn't much, but it was hers. For the first time in her life, she earned something built by her own strength. She looked at Klara sleeping peacefully beside her that night, and whispered softly, "This is just the beginning." And far away, the world she once feared was slowly starting to notice her. The first small corner Zara opened was never meant to become anything big. At least, that's what people thought. Even Zara herself didn't call it a restaurant in the beginning. It was just a place to cook, a place to survive, a place to keep moving forward. But life has a way of growing things that are built with truth. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. And slowly, something changed. More people started coming. Not because of advertisements. Not because of location. But because of something harder to explain. They came because the food felt alive. Zara didn't realize it at first. But people weren't just eating. They were remembering. Some remembered childhood flavors. Some remembered home. Some felt comfort they didn't expect. And every plate carried Zara's hidden story without her ever speaking it. Soon, the small corner became crowded. There were days she ran out of food before the day ended. Customers waited outside. Some came early just to get a seat. And for the first time, Zara felt something she had never felt before. Demand. But growth brings pressure. And pressure brings challenge. Zara began waking up earlier. Sleeping later. Working non-stop. She cooked. Served. Cleaned. Managed everything. There was no staff. No system. Only her. And Klara watching quietly from the side. Klara was growing now. She no longer just observed. She helped. Sometimes carrying small items. Sometimes wiping tables. Sometimes just sitting quietly while her mother worked. And Zara would look at her and think, "She is watching everything I do. I must not fail." But not everyone was happy with Zara's rise. Nearby businesses started noticing her success. First, they ignored her. Then they underestimated her. Now, they felt threatened. Rumors started spreading. How can a young woman alone succeed like this? Something must be wrong. She won't last long. But Zara didn't respond. She had no time for noise, only work. One evening, a local supplier refused to deliver our ingredients. Another day, prices suddenly increased. Small obstacles began appearing one after another. Not coincidence. Pressure. Competition. Resistance. But Zara adapted. She learned fast. She negotiated better. She planned smarter. Every problem became another lesson. And every lesson made her stronger. One night, after closing, she sat exhausted outside the small restaurant. The street was quiet. Klara was sleeping inside. And Zara finally allowed herself a moment to breathe. For the first time in years, she looked around and realized something. She had built something real. From nothing. But just as she began to feel stability, a shadow from the past was about to return. Heren. He had not disappeared from the world. He had only disappeared from her life. But life has a strange habit. It brings unfinished stories back. And somewhere far away, Heren's life was beginning to collapse in ways Zara did not yet know. Zara didn't know it yet, but the past she escaped was slowly moving back toward her. Zara's restaurant was no longer small. It had become a place people talked about, a place people returned to, a place that carried something beyond food, carried emotion. But success, no matter how strong it looks, never removes the past. It only hides it for a while. Zara had built her world carefully. Her days were busy. Her nights were short. But her heart was finally steady. Klara was growing up strong beside her. And for the first time in her life, Zara felt peace. Not perfect peace, but earned peace. Then one ordinary afternoon changed everything. A customer walked in. Nothing unusual. Just another face among many. But Zara noticed something strange. The way he stood. The way he looked around. The silence in his expression. Something felt familiar. Too familiar. She didn't recognize him at first. Not immediately. Because time changes people. It breaks them. It rebuilds them. It erases parts of who they used to be. But when he finally turned, everything stopped. It was Heren. For a moment, the world inside Zara went silent. Not fear. Not anger. Just stillness. Like a memory she had buried long ago, suddenly breathing again. Heren didn't recognize her at first. Not fully. He saw a strong woman. Confident owner. Presence he didn't expect. But he didn't connect the past immediately. Because he was looking for someone broken. Not someone rebuilt. He sat down. Ordered food. Waited. Completely unaware that the person serving his order was the life he destroyed. Zara walked slowly. Every step controlled. Every breath steady. She placed the food in front of him. And for a second, their eyes met. Something shifted. A pause. A recognition that didn't need explanation. Heren froze. His expression changed. Confusion. Then shock. Then disbelief. Because now he saw it. Not just the woman, but the past. Zara? His voice was low. Uncertain. Almost afraid. She didn't respond immediately. She just looked at him. Not as the girl she once was, but as the woman she became. And then she said quietly, "You're late." Those two words carried everything. The years of struggle. The nights of pain. The silence. The abandonment. The survival. Everything inside two words. Heren couldn't speak. He looked around the restaurant. At the success. At the people. At the life she built. A life he was never part of. And then he saw her properly. Not broken. Not lost. But strong. Stronger than anything he remembered. For the first time, Heren understood something painful. He didn't leave behind a weak woman. He left behind a survivor. Zara didn't raise her voice. She didn't create a scene. She didn't need to, because her life was already the answer. Klara appeared from behind the counter, older now, calm, observing, and when Heren saw her, everything inside him broke again, because time had created a distance he could never repair. He tried to speak, but Zara raised her hand slightly, not angry, just final. "This place is not your past," she said softly. "It's my life now." Silence filled the room. Even the air felt heavier. Heren lowered his eyes, not out of fear, but out of realization that some mistakes don't ask for forgiveness. They only ask for acceptance. He stood up slowly, left money on the table, but Zara didn't look at it. She didn't need it. As he walked out, he stopped at the door. One last look, but Zara had already turned away, back to her work, back to her life, back to her future. And Heren finally understood. Some people don't wait for the past to return. They outgrow it. The door closed, not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly, like the end of something that should have ended long ago. Zara continued serving customers, smiling, moving forward, living, because her story was never about revenge. It was about becoming. And as the camera fades, one truth remains. She didn't just survive her past. She built something so strong that even her pain became part of her success.